It started on what seemed like an ordinary Saturday afternoon at a bustling outdoor market, a place where families gathered, vendors displayed their crafts, and music floated through the air. Yet in the middle of laughter and chatter, an ugly confrontation erupted that froze the crowd in silence. A woman's piercing voice cut through the atmosphere, dripping with venom and entitlement, as she hurled words that carried centuries of pain. Her target was a man who had come only to enjoy his day, unaware that his calm presence would soon shake the ground beneath everyone's feet. The story unfolds in a mid-sized American city, in a neighborhood known for its vibrant cultural events. Every month, the city hosted a community market that celebrated diversity, food, and art. Stalls lined the sidewalks, selling handmade jewelry, African drums, soul food, Mexican spices, and fresh produce. It was a living example of America's melting pot, alive with color and sound. Among the crowd that day was Marcus Henderson, a tall, dignified man in his early 40s. Marcus was not just another visitor, he was deeply rooted in the community. A successful entrepreneur and philanthropist, he had spent years building programs to help underprivileged youth discover opportunities in technology and business. His calm, gentle presence and commanding aura often drew respect, even before people knew who he was. Marcus moved from stall to stall with his reusable bag, stopping to chat with vendors. He was dressed casually, dark jeans, a button-up shirt, and a cap. Despite his modest appearance, there was something about his composure that gave away his quiet strength. He had grown up in this very city, once facing poverty and discrimination, but he had risen above it with resilience and perseverance. Today, he simply wanted to enjoy the sunshine and support local businesses. But as Marcus walked toward a stand selling handmade pottery, he unknowingly crossed paths with a woman whose bitterness and prejudice had been simmering for years. Her name was Patricia, a middle-aged woman known among locals for her sharp tongue and frequent complaints about change in the neighborhood. She saw Marcus not as a neighbor, not as a man, but as an unwelcome presence in what she mistakenly believed was her world to control. Patricia had lived in the city long enough to witness its transformation. As more people of color and immigrants settled in, she felt threatened, clinging desperately to a past that existed only in her mind. She often muttered about outsiders taking over, though her words were usually ignored or dismissed. But on this day, with frustration boiling over, she decided to make Marcus her target. The market was crowded, children playing, families laughing, street musicians performing. Marcus stood examining a piece of pottery when Patricia's voice suddenly sliced through the atmosphere. The words that left her mouth were meant not only to humiliate him but to strip away his humanity. The crowd, caught off guard, fell into an uneasy silence. Patricia's outburst began like a spark, but within seconds, it burned like wildfire. "Why don't you go back to Africa?" she spat, her face twisted with scorn, loud enough for everyone around to hear. Conversation stopped. A mother pulled her child closer. A vendor's hand froze mid-transaction. The weight of her words lingered in the air, carrying with them centuries of pain and prejudice, echoing the voices of those who had once sought to silence, diminish, and exclude. Her statement wasn't new, it was recycled hatred, a relic of ignorance dressed in modern clothing. Marcus turned slowly, locking eyes with her. His gaze was steady, not angry, but deeply firm, almost as if he were staring through her venom into the history that had produced it. Patricia expected him to lash out, to argue, to create a scene that would justify her disdain. Instead, he said nothing at first. Silence stretched, pressing down on the crowd that had gathered. People around shifted uncomfortably. Some wanted to speak up but hesitated, afraid of confrontation. Others simply watched, caught between disbelief and anticipation. Patricia crossed her arms, emboldened by her own words, mistaking Marcus's calmness for weakness. She raised her voice again, adding fuel to the fire. "People like you don't belong here. You come, you take, and you think you own the place. You should be grateful we even let you stay." The cruelty of her words was amplified by the silence surrounding her. The market, once filled with joy, now felt like a courtroom, with Patricia assuming the role of accuser and Marcus standing as defendant. But Marcus was not on trial. He had nothing to prove. Instead of reacting with rage, he took a deep breath. He could feel the eyes of children on him, watching carefully, learning silently. He could sense the heaviness in the crowd, the question hanging in the air. How would he respond? Marcus knew the weight of the moment. He knew that his response was not just about him but about every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. Every ancestor who had endured chains, every worker who had been denied opportunities, every child who had been told they were less than. And so, he decided to respond in a way that no one expected. Marcus stepped forward, his presence alone commanding silence. He placed the pottery he was holding gently back on the table and turned to face Patricia fully. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm, deep, and resonant, carrying across the marketplace without the need to shout. "You tell me to go back to Africa," he began, his words deliberate, his tone steady. "But let me remind you, my ancestors were brought here in chains. They built the foundations of this country, brick by brick, field by field, sweat by sweat. Their blood runs through the soil of this land. So when you say I don't belong, you reveal not my place, but your ignorance." The crowd inhaled sharply, some nodding, others frozen in awe. Patricia's smug expression faltered, but Marcus continued, unwavering. "I am as much a part of this nation as anyone here. My grandparents picked cotton in the South, while yours benefited from their labor. My father served in the military, defending freedoms that allow you to stand here and insult me today. And me, I've dedicated my life to lifting up others, to building businesses that create jobs, to giving opportunities to kids who might otherwise be forgotten." He paused, letting his words sink in. His voice did not tremble, nor did he waver. It was as if centuries of resilience were speaking through him. So no, he concluded, I will not go back to Africa. Because I never left. This is my home. This is my country. And I belong here just as much as you, or anyone else. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the crowd. People clapped, cheered, and shouted words of support. Patricia's face flushed with embarrassment, her arrogance crumbling as she realized she had been dismantled not by anger, but by truth. The applause grew louder, rising like a wave that washed over Patricia's bitterness. Vendors stepped out of their stalls, parents lifted their children higher so they could see, and strangers patted Marcus on the back as if his words had spoken for all of them. Patricia, overwhelmed by the collective rejection of her hatred, turned away, her voice silenced not by force but by the undeniable power of truth. She disappeared into the crowd, smaller than she had ever seemed, her prejudice shrinking under the weight of community solidarity. Marcus did not smile in triumph. He did not raise his arms in victory. Instead, he stood quietly, acknowledging the moment for what it was, a reminder that dignity and truth always outshine hate, even when hate screams the loudest. In the days that followed, the story of the marketplace confrontation spread across the community and beyond. Videos recorded by bystanders went viral, reaching millions who found inspiration in Marcus's response. His words were replayed on news segments, quoted in articles, and shared across social media. They became more than a defense, they became a lesson. For Marcus, life continued as usual. He went back to his work, mentoring young people, supporting local businesses, and spending time with his family. But his response that day remained etched in the minds of those who witnessed it. It became a symbol of how truth can dismantle ignorance, and how calm strength can silence hate more powerfully than rage ever could. And perhaps the most powerful impact was on the children who had stood in that crowd. They saw with their own eyes how a man of dignity and courage responded to hatred, not with violence or despair, but with words that carried history, truth, and unshakable pride. So the question lingers, echoing long after the applause faded, when faced with hatred, will we add fuel to the fire, or will we, like Marcus, use it as a moment to rise, to teach, and to stand firm in the truth of who we are?